And today was a day just like any other.
Wasted on you, and every word you say something sweet, 'cause all I taste is blood between my teeth as I'm fighting the words. You're getting away. Well, I'm ready to drop. I'm ready. So don't stop, I'm ready, so don't stop. Keep pushing, I'm ready to fall. I'm ready, so don't call. I'm ready, so don't call. I am aware I've been misled. I disconnect my heart, my head. Don't wanna recognize when things go bad. The things that you'll accept that I am finding the words to say I'm ready. I'm ready to drop. I'm ready. I'm ready, so don't stop. I'm ready, so don't stop.
I wake up to find it's another 4-hour morning and I dive in. I put on the same clothes I wore yesterday. When did society decide that we have to change and wash a t-shirt after every individual use? If it's not dirty, I'm gonna wear it. I take the stairs to the car and there's fog on the windows.
I'm finding the words.
I need caffeine in my bloodstream. I take caffeine to the bloodstream. I grip the wheel. And all once I realize,
And you're getting away.
my life has become a boring pop song and everyone's singing along.
I'm ready. I'm ready to drive. Well, I'm ready. I'm ready, so don't stop. Well, keep pushing. I'm ready to fall. Well, I'm ready. I'm ready, so don't call. I'm ready, so don't
All right, well, welcome back to Bold Like a Leopard, and we're going to talk tonight about the fallout from the midterm election and really where we go as a country from here. Is there anything positive that you can say about it? And obviously, it's coming from the standpoint, in my case, I genuinely don't really have any affinity to the Democrats, but you have to acknowledge they ran with the goal to win, and they did it at any cost. So I'm not sure exactly what to do about it. Um, this is something that there might not be an electoral solution for. And by that, I'm not somebody who's going to advocate for you to do anything drastic or illegal. But, there's a saying that I heard a while ago called that goes a little like, People want democracy, so they'll get democracy good and hard. So it's pretty infuriating what's happened in terms of the past week or so when you consider that Arizona has not concluded its vote counting. Nevada also took a very long time. I believe Washington, Oregon, and California have all not yet concluded their vote counting. So, with all due respect for the people who say, well, oh, this is just democracy in action. No, democracy doesn't take a week to happen. Most modern countries around the world can actually hold an election within 24 hours and have the results and have the people ready to move on, regardless of the outcome. And the fact that none of these states, which are all on the West Coast, are able to do that is an indication that something is actually broken in the system. And those of us that accept it, are basically saying that America is no better than any third world country. That we can't really function the way we have for decades. Um, isn't it not true, for example, that back in the 40s, even, right? So that there was that famous photo here. Let me see if I can find it. So this is a photo that um, if you went to high school or even earlier in grade school in the U.S., this is like a photo that they generally put in textbooks. And let's see if I can just open the image. So, so let me see, display, put it up there. So you can see, let me, there you go. So this is President Truman celebrating on the night of his reelection. They had the newspaper saying Dewey defeats Truman, but people knew that it was actually the other way around. It's just one of the most famous photos in American history because it's hilarious. You have the president basically holding up the wrong headline for his reelection result, and they knew at the time. They knew on election day that Truman had won the election, and this was 1948. So don't give me this bullshit about, well, we need to let the process take its place, and we need to know for sure, and we need to count every vote and democracy and whatever. This isn't a matter of democracy. Like, I think that unfortunately, in many states in the country, you're basically living in a banana republic. I live in Ohio. I think that fortunately, I mean, we're better off than some other states. Obviously, nobody's perfect. But what happens in Pennsylvania, where they elect a guy who, and that I don't believe that there was foul play that would have influenced the election. I think there was foul play, but I think unfortunately enough morons voted for uh, Josh Shapiro to be governor because they thought that he'd be a great governor for whatever reason, and they voted for a brain dead idiot named John Fetterman to be their senator. So I don't really value the theme of democracy that much anymore because I see sometimes how shallow people's choices are. That they would pick somebody simply because he happens to wear a hoodie and sound authentic for a while, and he pretends to be really the salt of the earth. So people liked John Fetterman as opposed to Dr. Oz. I think Dr. Oz was a poor candidate, and yet you can be a poor candidate and still wonder how they pick another guy who is essentially. It's difficult to believe that he would be able to function at a high level in any job where they require you to think on your feet. Um, what do all those states have in common? They're blue. By the way, Chris has been watching this channel for a long time. So he says, surely a coincidence that they're all blue states. Look, I think that that's too simple of an answer. I think definitely blue states, they have a bigger problem with this, but you didn't see that problem in Illinois, which is a very blue state. Not as bad in New York. Obviously, New York wasn't like right off the bat ready. They didn't have the results within the day, but they had them. You know what? I'll say that New York for sure they had some issues, but in the end, New York, I think they didn't dramatically change the results there. I think Maryland, for example, that took a long time. So I think one issue is a lot of these blue states, but Arizona has never been a traditional blue state. You simply have people who are corrupt, and they are Democrats usually, who run the election in Arizona, where you have Katie Hobbs, one of the people who is running for governor. She oversees the whole election process, and there was actually a case in the last 2 weeks where she mailed 250,000 ballots, mail-in ballots, inappropriately. And you see that since she's become Secretary of State, there have been 3 elections that have been run on a very poor basis. They've all had to take much longer than people would expect. That would be 2020 and this year's primary and midterm. So 3 separate elections that were all run terribly by the same person. And for some reason, nobody holds her accountable for this. That's why I think that Carrie Lake winning was really a big hope of mine. I don't know if it's going to happen, and people are predicting that it's really just a formality and she just has to go ahead. Look, I don't take anything for granted, and unfortunately, I'm prepared to wake up to a day tomorrow when Katie Hobbs is declared the official winner of the Arizona race. And let me see. Saying that my bit rate isn't good on this stream, but it seems to be working. Anyway, if you have any interruptions, let me know, because I don't always find out unless I'm looking at the OBS. So I'm going to talk today. This isn't going to be a terribly long live stream, but I wanted to get some thoughts off my chest before we go into the week. It's been a difficult past week, and weekend just very busy and very disappointing, obviously, for many of us. And I'm not going to sugarcoat the future we have ahead of us, but I want to discuss some of the few benefits, I'm putting it in quotations, for the Republicans having a poor showing in last week's election. So the biggest benefit, in my opinion, is that when you look at this media landscape that was predicting Democratic doom, they are going to be deceived by this reprieve, this small victory, right? The Democrats are basically, they're going to control the Senate. We know that for sure now because Adam Laxalt was declared, or sorry, Catherine Cortez Masto was declared the winner in Nevada. So Adam Laxalt lost the race over there, which I don't actually believe was a clean race. I don't care what YouTube says; they can go after me. But I think that a race that takes a week to count, you should be able to talk about the fact that it's not a clean process, right? You have to be able to lawfully execute an election in due time in order for people to actually have confidence in it. And those people that are saying, I was, this is election denialism. There was actually a story today from NPR in Montana. So NPR, Montana, Secretary of State. Or no, it was Idaho. Sorry, I have the wrong state. This is, in my opinion, like 1984 level propaganda. So, or no, it was PBS. Sorry. Fact checking myself live. So, yes, so here we go. So PBS NewsHour reclassifies Idaho Secretary of State elect Phil McGrain as an election defender. So listen to the absurdity of this article's language. It says, following alerts from our audience and others, the PBS NewsHour has decided to delete a tweet we posted about Idaho Secretary of State elect Philip McGrain. The NewsHour has moved McGrain from the category, quote, fuels doubts, end quote, to, quote, election defender, end quote. Our original decision was based on Mr. McGrain's previous words in the April primary debate. We have three categories: those denying the election, those fueling doubt, and those defending the election. Here's a look at our approach. So they have to categorize people's viewpoints on election integrity in order to label them. And the way that they label them is that they're either an election denier or an election defender, or they fuel doubts, and therefore they already put a sliding value system on their grading of these candidates for Secretary of State. Get this. So this is what they said. After we reported this categorization in a tweet, we heard from some Idaho reporters and viewers and reached out to the candidate himself. Talking with our public media colleagues, and especially with Mr. McGrain, we now know that he is an election defender. McGrain told NewsHour correspondent Lisa Desjardins Joe Biden was fairly elected. The original tweet has been deleted and our charts will be updated. So understand how ridiculous this system is. PBS, which mind you is the public broadcasting system of America, they're funded in large part by viewers like you, with the middle finger, and so you're paying for part of NPR whether you like it or not, or sorry, PBS, and yet they get to decide by their own standard, right? Who is an election defender and who is an election denier, even though that's really up to the voters to decide. We don't need the media to label people and put them on their own value scale, especially if this is state-run media. So this is the same type of propaganda that we criticize other nations for doing, right? And I don't care which nations they are. I think that you have to be skeptical of all state-run propaganda. Listen, I used to watch RT, and while they had some interesting programs, you could tell a lot of it was dumb and retarded. So so it was really like you'd watch a program and you'd be like, do they really expect people to swallow this? And that's why I believe that censorship has to be classified as the big enemy of the public, right? The fact that they want to keep information from you, keep you from digesting it, simply because you might believe it, shows that the media is not to be trusted. By the media, I think this would be an excellent example. PBS, which I grew up watching as a kid. I used to watch Shining Time Station on PBS, just like every other snot-nosed kid back in 1994. They don't have the right to tell you whether this candidate is valid or not. But even more important, they waited until after the election to correct the record on this guy. So until then, they were calling him an election denier. Do you realize how Orwellian this is? That suddenly the election's over and, oh, well, now we're going to go back and correct our mistake, delete our tweet, and everything's all fine and dandy, and we should just be on good terms with this guy. I think that it's just been revolting how the media has treated these topics, and of course that's one of the reasons I think that the Democrats were able to perform better than expected, because they were getting carried across the finish line in many cases by the media, in Pennsylvania especially. I think the way that they all went to bat in order to defend John Fetterman, even when one of their own reporters said that, yeah, I had issues, actually understanding anything he said, and I don't know if he understood what I said. They went to bat to defend him. The media ganging up on Doug Mastriano. Now, I would say, with all due respect to Mastriano, and when I would hear his interviews, I'd say, yeah, this seems like a good candidate. But he was not a good candidate. He failed because I think he had bad strategy. I think that he did have a strategy where he went and tried to preach too much to the choir and didn't really reach out to people who aren't necessarily on the same page as him. I get it that you can't necessarily swing people who are diehard, hardcore liberals and would vote for, and they would literally vote for a scorpion that is wounded and trying to sting you as long as it was a blue one. Um, I think that he needed to reach out to people who are, less engaged, right? And one of the few ways to do that is to engage through media, and there are people who do it well, and I think there's a good reason why Doug Mastriano lost by a massive margin, and Carrie Lake maybe will. I mean, she may lose very well, and I'm prepared to you know deal with that, but she's going to lose by a much closer margin because she actually went on the offense and went to the media and played, and instead of letting them play her, she threw the game right back at them. Probably because she has a lot of interest of experience through her own career as a TV anchor. So I think that it's just been a terrible week, and it could be a terrible next 2 years at least because uh, that there really is no alternative at the moment that really gives you a cohesive path. Right, the Republican Party is not in good shape. You have and it's confirmed a lot of the doubts that people like me have had in it for many years, right? That there's a similar process going on in the UK. Many people are feeling like the Conservative Party over there doesn't have any commitment to the issues. All they have is a commitment to remaining in power and pretending that they actually are, that they're working for Britain. Meanwhile, they end up uh, betraying every single goal. The main goal being, securing Britain's borders and keeping out the hordes and hordes of so-called migrants or whatever. These are really people that are abusing the refugee system in Britain, and their system is going to collapse. And that's one of the big themes that I'm going to harp on tonight, which is okay. So I already mentioned that one of the benefits is that the Democrats, I think, will be lulled into complacency. They'll be thinking, look, we basically can do whatever we want and we go unpunished. Nobody's really paying attention. A lot of people just vote reflexively for us, and they do. I live in a blue county, and many people here, they'll just vote for whatever Democrat is put out there. Um, that's their message. But in my opinion, it's a major problem for them. And one of the issues is that you've seen in some states that they get to be so dysfunctional that people can't ignore it anymore. The Democrats are seeing their grip lighten, especially in New York State, which I think it has to be one of the first states to be liberated, so to speak, in the future. Because without the state of New York, what is America? New York is a beautiful state. I think it gets a bad rap. I think as a kid, I vacationed once in Long Island. Fantastic place, fantastic beaches, and upstate New York, the Finger Lakes region. We went to. Certainly been around Niagara Falls for a few visits, and also I've been to the city of New York, um, you know, which is the epicenter of America's financial system. I went there several times for work. Um, so I appreciate the whole state. And I think that those people that are writing it off because they don't like New Yorkers, they don't like the people and the culture there, they don't understand that we need states like that in order for the country to go ahead. The problem is that the voters there have not yet gotten to the point where they've completely shifted gears, but you can see that the change is on its way. Um, let me see here. So I'm hopefully going to have an article coming out this week about our Senate race here in Ohio, but I'm going to maybe do a different stream on that. Let me see here. So here's from the Post. Um, so yeah, their Senate race. In their Senate race, Chuck Schumer actually, I mean, obviously he won by a large margin, but you can see most of his support was limited to New York City and the Hudson Valley, Lower Hudson mainly, and he won in Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo. But there's a lot of pockets of red developing. Now he did relatively well in the governor's race. Even less support. You see her losing another county, Dutchess County. So Lee Zeldin, the Republican challenger, actually won Dutchess County by a comfortable margin. He won Rockland County by a very large margin, by 13%. He won Orange County, if you know that. If you ever drive into the Catskills, I think they start at Orange County. Um, so those upstate counties, he did incredibly well, and uh, definitely we're seeing a trend where I think the Democrats are going to start to be just a very regional party in New York State. I mean, obviously both of them are very regional, but you're seeing the Democrat regions become more limited. Now, Westchester County, which is the well-off part of New York that borders Connecticut, definitely becoming more blue because a lot of these rich liberals who, they commute to work in the city, or I don't know, they don't want somebody peeing on their doorstep every day, or worse, so they move out to Westchester County. Well, there's going to be a limit to that. People don't move out to Westchester in order to be flooded with a lot of other people, and I think eventually they're gonna end up having a change of heart too. And if you look at New York City itself, so in Queens she won 2/3 of the vote. In Manhattan, sorry, this is Brooklyn. So in Brooklyn she won by a massive margin, and in the Bronx, so really this is the real model for Democrats and progressives, that they end up, holding on to power thanks to the support of a critical mass of the poorest voters, and also a lot of the richest voters. So people who are involved in Wall Street and in finance, and who need to have their bread buttered on the right side of the slice. So they'll support the Democrat because they want the regulations and taxes to be favorable to them. They can even work out tax breaks with these politicians. You see it especially in cases like what's happened recently with the Sam Bankman-Fried, who is the big crypto billionaire that just went completely belly up, lost his fortune in the past week or so. So for him, Sam Bankman-Fried was actually a big a big donor to the Democratic causes, because, mind you, he wanted to be able to help write the crypto regulations. So I think that a lot of the problems that the Democrats see up ahead is that, yes, they can stay in power for as long as the poorest New Yorkers, state employees, and big big business will support them. But eventually, all of those, that coalition, I don't think is really sustainable. First of all, the big business people, if there's a big economic downturn in the future, they're not going to want to support this, because their livelihood is affected as well. They get a smaller piece of the pie, and if they're supporting the Democrats, all they're doing is trying to conserve a smaller and smaller piece. So I think it will boil down to a lot of economic thinking. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm a very pro-life person, but I'm going to get to that issue as well. Those of us that are pro-life, what does this election say about our stance? Because so many pro-life initiatives failed and so many pro-choice initiatives succeeded. What does that say about our place in the American electorate? Because unfortunately, I think those of us that believe that the rights of the unborn, they should have legal standing, um, we're getting basically rolled up in many of these states, even in states like Montana and Kentucky that normally wouldn't expect. And it's a big topic of discussion, and we should discuss it because we don't want progress to be undone. The overturning of Roe v. Wade give us the opportunity to fight back against this barbaric practice, and we shouldn't just be complacent about it and just expect in red states, oh, they're just going to vote automatically for defending life. No, you have to fight for life, even if you think that it's an easy walk through the park, because the abortion supporters are fanatical about it. I'm going to get into that a little bit more later. So the U.S. House races that I wanted to go through, you had 4 flips in favor of the GOP in New York. So you actually had, let me see here. So New York's 22nd district is still outstanding, but um, let's assume for the moment that if it stays Republican. I think that it is not a flip. So you'll still have 4 flips for the Republicans. You'll have this district, the 19th, the 17th, Michael Lawler, who defeated the head of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC. You had the 4th district, which was Anthony Despacito, and not like the song, like the Italian name. And I think there was another one up in, yeah, so New York's 3rd district also flipped. So all of Long Island is now in the GOP's hands. Now look, when I talk about these things, you have to understand, I think the Republican Party is a flawed vehicle for ideas like mine. I don't think the Republican Party as a whole has really represented the best path forward for defending life, defending the right to keep and bear arms, defending individual rights and freedom of speech. The Republican Party has a bad past in terms of many of those issues, including ones that it says it stands for. They're not actually very good at defending gun owners' rights. They're not good at defending the right to life because so many Republicans have been willing to compromise on these things, and compromise is difficult to swallow. So, for example, the woman who is the current GOP representative from Staten Island, Nicole Maliotakis, who just got elected by a wide margin, actually voted for the Build Back Better bill last year, and absolutely, it's a betrayal. So, what am I supposed to say? Am I supposed to celebrate these people getting reelected simply because they have an R after their name? It's not really something I can actually look at as a positive development. Now it might be better her than the other people that were on the ballot, but that's not the way that you want to approach politics. You want to, I'm somebody, I believe that you have to have goals, and if the goals are not accomplished, then who cares who's going to be elected into office? So to summarize this point here, I think that states like New York, there is room for growth, but you're going to run up against issues like, are you really winning people over because of their values? Because New York State is definitely a pro-choice state. There's probably parts of it in upstate and in Long Island or whatever that are more evangelical, or there's more religious communities, or for whatever reason they're pro-life. Certainly there's a lot of pro Second Amendment parts of New York, especially in West New York, um, the Cattaraugus region and Buffalo area, Erie County, some parts of it. So those are areas where there's a lot of woodland, and people want to do some hunting, or they want to go and hike in the woods or something. So there is more support in upstate New York for those values that are common to states like ours, like the Midwest. And you could say that just like many other states, New York has plenty of rural areas that could commune with, the Midwest more so than with the East Coast. So I want people to bear that in mind, that we shouldn't just write off an entire state simply because a big portion of them are, they'll just vote Democratic no matter what. But yeah, it does mean that you have to approach voters very differently, and that's something that I don't think Doug Mastriano processed very well. So, the title of this stream, of course, is some benefits of having having this, what I call the big red fail, and you could take it from many standpoints. I'm not putting it from the standpoint of being a Democrat, obviously, because if you're a Democrat, obviously you think it's a great thing that you retain control of power. But is it really a great thing for them? Because hypothetically, so let's say they only control the Senate, so they could put in, this is the benefit for them, they could put in whatever judges they want. In fact, it's very possible that if Herschel Walker were defeated next month, and Raphael Warnock retains his seat, so it's going to be a 51 seat majority for the Democrats in the Senate, so they could push in judges almost at will, right? They would need to lose 2 votes in order for a judge to fail, and those 2 votes would have to come from Joe Manchin and one other senator, maybe Kirsten Sinema, like has been in the past. But who knows? They might be emboldened. They might be saying to themselves, we don't need to hold back. We can just vote however we want. The American people aren't going to hold us accountable, especially not Sinema. So it's actually that I think is the worst part. But in a different sense, they're not going to be able to pass legislation as easily as they did in the first 2 years, even if they retained control of the House. And that's for the simple reason that their majority has shrunk to an even narrower margin. And this might be small consolation, but it still means something, because you need people to be on the floor and ready to vote whenever a big resolution is coming through. And a lot of congressmen, they have to go back to their district and be connected to the voters. They have to physically drive or fly back. So it's not always possible for them to be in Congress for every single vote. And that's one of the big flaws of our system, that sometimes we elect people to Congress and then they spend the next 2 years trying to raise money to get reelected. And, what are you supposed to say to that? It definitely shows that the system is dysfunctional, and that these people aren't spending their time representing you. They're spending their time trying to help to hold on to their seat. So all these people who criticize big money in politics, I think that there's something to be said about the effort the candidates have to go through in order to remain funded for their campaigns. Besides that, so the Democrats would have to, if they retain control of the House, which probably won't happen, but let's talk about the scenario first. If they control the House and there's this massive economic downturn, which I've been talking about fairly frequently recently, and look, this crypto bubble bursting could be one sign of the onset of this big economic downturn. There's also big tech layoffs. There's also a lot of layoffs in the real estate industry. There's also, inflation has tailed off a little bit since last month in some metrics, but in other metrics it's still very high. So all of these different economic indicators, which are showing the people aren't actually enjoying their time in this economy, those issues get ignored, because the Democrats will think, well, the people don't actually care. The inflation didn't drive them to the polls to vote against us, or even if it did, we were able to get a lot of people to vote on the other end for us because of their fears that the GOP would do worse on inflation, or what I like to think, okay, this is my hypothesis. There's many voters who don't care how the economy will go. There are voters out there that they place such a high value on abortion rights that they're willing to vote on that, even if they're suffering financially because of the way the economy is going. So they care more about the right for doctors to take the life of an infant than they do for people to be able to prosper and live well in America. And that, I think, is a basic difference and divergence of values between one part of America and the other. I believe that we should encourage people to live the best life they can, try to be as healthy as they can, and have the freedom to choose, make consumer choices, make market choices, try to be, try to seek the best career that they can. Those types of things. So I'm looking for a society where civil liberties are stronger in order for there to be prosperity. And on that side, on the Democratic side, the choices all have to do with hedonistic things. So abortion, it's not in and of itself hedonistic. It's a contingency, right? Because people generally don't look to get an abortion just because they want to. People end up in that situation and desperation, and it's a contingency. But this consequence-free life, where people are told that you can do things like indulge in recreational drugs and have unprotected sex, and also get an abortion, and then you now have this issue of encouraging children who have gender identity issues to transition. So all of these issues are connected because they indulge hedonistic tendencies, that you can be whatever you want to be just because it gives you pleasure, or it validates some sort of internal urge that's in you, whether or not it's valid or healthy. They don't care. The Democrats and a lot of their voters don't care, because they see it as a real valid expression of your personhood to do all of these things. It doesn't matter whether it's good for you or not. They think that it is legitimate simply because they put a virtue on it. And that's why I think you have such a massive divergence in why people vote, because I'll tell you what, I think plenty of people would go out and vote on the Republican side to preserve the right to life and also Second Amendment rights, even if the president that's in power has led to a major economic crisis, right? So you did see in 2008, there were many Republicans that still voted for John McCain, even though McCain was part of the group that had caused this whole economic meltdown. He was one of the people who approved a lot of these budgets and big, big regulations that helped to lead to the crash of 2008. I think the Glass-Steagall Act being repealed was one issue that even people like Peter Schiff, I think say that the Glass-Steagall Act was a big, it was a legitimate protection that would have helped avert an economic crisis. Now, it wouldn't have completely prevented it from happening, but it was not something that actually should have been repealed. Okay, so where was I? So this issue of the economy being a major drag on the Democrats going forward, I don't think that it diminishes, right? I think that they definitely had a problem convincing voters that they would do better on the economy. The problem was that there are people out there that will consistently go out and vote, even if they're experiencing economic suffering, because their value system is only embodied by voting for the Democratic Party. So they'll fool themselves into thinking that they're going to get a better future by voting for the same people that put them into this mess, because on the other hand, they also get the added validation of their worldview that they're defending abortion. So that's something that I happen to believe. Now you can agree with me on that, but or you can disagree. But I think it definitely played a role here because you're already seeing a lot of these liberals are saying, yeah, it was our mass movement on abortion that helped to blunt the gains of the GOP in this election, and I think it certainly blunted the gains of GOP candidates in certain states like Wisconsin and Michigan. I was very bummed when I found out that Tudor Dixon wouldn't be able to flip the Michigan governor's mansion. I actually think the governor's mansions are to some degree more important than the Senate seats. So, do you really think that your senator is responsible for whether you're able to go to school or go to work without having to wear a face mask or get a vaccine? Not really. I mean, the senators they're there to pass legislation. They often will not vote for legislation that's unpopular. So senators are a big deal. Hold on. I need to lock this desk. So sorry about that. So um, the big issue I think with uh, that is you need a governor who will be somebody who stands up for your liberty. That's why I didn't vote for our governor. I think Mike DeWine is very fickle and superficial on the issues of civil liberties. He's somebody who will talk a big game about how he supports um, supports a conservative lifestyle in Ohio, and he wants people to be able to go about their business. But he was for stay-at-home orders, so I didn't vote for our governor here. I actually wrote in my dog's name, and he's sleeping down there. But yeah, I think I would still vote for him for governor. I might end up having to vote for him for governor again in 2026 if if we get there, right? So as a planet, we're going through a lot of big challenges at the moment. Um, so yeah, I think the big benefit that I want to stress here on this stream is that we are going to go through a very difficult period. I don't know the best way to prepare you for it because people have their different situations. I think that certainly um, stockpiling and keeping non-perishable goods is one way, and also figuring out like an emergency plan for you and your family. If you're in a rural area, obviously that'll be different from living in an urban area, and there's different weather conditions out there, but um, you know all of this volatility is not going to go away. It's actually going to increase in some quarters of the country, and even where things calm down for a little while, I think a lot of the same fissures in the country's electorate are going to remain under the surface and ready to burst out. Similar to how people get cured from malaria, but it always remains dormant in their system. That's the way I think that this big rift in America is going to go between people on the right and people on the left, or if you want to be more specific, Democrats and Republicans, or you know any other label you want to put on it. We're a divided country, so the Democrats are under this mistaken assumption that they've been validated because they didn't get as badly defeated this time as they should have, right? In my opinion, they should have lost up to 30 seats. They should have been way out of the majority in the House. They should have also probably lost the Senate majority, but they were able to drum up a lot of support from abortionists. And I think that the penalty they're going to pay for this is that as the economy does go through painful cycles, right? When you see the effects of inflation intensify, when you see massive unemployment from a big recession, they're not going to be able to point their finger, even dishonestly, at the GOP, because the GOP will have been out of power for over 2 years at that point, and the Republicans will be able to say, well, I mean, you came up with these budgets. Very few of our people actually voted for them. Many of those people who did vote for them on the GOP side have been eliminated because they were Trump impeachment supporters. So people like Liz Cheney or the other guy, Adam Kinzinger. So those people are going to bear the responsibility for supporting uh, policies like the American Rescue Plan, which was Biden's first big stimulus package. They're going to be held responsible for supporting the big back better agenda. So those people who want there to be a big change going forward, it might benefit them. Okay, this is very um, you know, this is small consolation because you're going to be dealing with the crisis itself. But the people who bear the blame for the crisis are going to largely be Democratic politicians and figures. And I think that as some of these businesses start to actually unravel and fall apart in this economic climate, as has to happen, because they're simply not run efficiently. A lot of the employees, the people who for many years took for granted that they had a good system under this corporation, and often those corporations push democratic values, they're going to have a culture shock. They're going to realize that they've been trusting the wrong people this entire time. And I think that they could become politically disillusioned with this left wing uh, monoculture that exists in many of these companies. So I think that's about it. You can understand where I'm coming at. So to summarize very briefly, the benefits right now are that the GOP itself is going to have to change and adapt to a newer world. So I don't know which direction it's going to go, but I would hope actually that some of the people, if you saw the thumbnail, you saw Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz. I actually believe that they deserve bigger roles in the party and leadership because they've proven that they can succeed and get reelected. Even Lauren Boebert apparently is probably going to be reelected uh, in the end by a slimmer margin, albeit, but still. So these voices who have been urging the Republican Party to change for the better and be more representative of the desires of its voting base, I think that they're going to be able to make major gains because a lot of the people that were opposing them are basically aging out of the system. And then on the other hand, the Democrats are going to have to deal with being the party in power during the recession, and people are going to be asking, well, why didn't you plan for this? Why didn't you do X? Why didn't you try to prevent this from happening? How come you voted to pass this budget? How come you paid for this when you hadn't even paid for that anymore? Why are you starting a war here when you still haven't resolved the war over there and you're paying for both of them? So those are all themes that I think the Democrats are going to suffer greatly from. But unfortunately, you can't rely on that happening. I was very cautious about predicting in 2022, and some of the predictions I did make, uh, I do see that I didn't do a good job anyway. I do think that I was accurate the whole time as far as Pennsylvania. There were people that were drinking the Kool-Aid and thinking that Mastriano would win. I never really thought he could win. I thought that maybe he could be a good governor, but I thought he was going to lose the race because I don't think he ran a great campaign. And I think those should be lessons that you have to win. You have to run the campaign that you know will win, not the campaign that you feel validates your worldview. And you still can remain true to your values, but try to use the strategy that will get you across the finish line. I don't think enough of these GOP candidates did it, and I think the country will be worse off for it. Although, like I've said, they could not prevent what's already been done. What's going to happen to the U.S. economy, the die has already been cast, and we're basically playing out the game that was set up by generations before us. That's about it. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'm going to post this also to Odyssey Stream. So that's ODYSEE, and Rumble and BitChute. And you can find all of my links to other social media platforms and video hosting sites in the description below. It's a link tree. So you can find me on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, and a bunch of other websites. In fact, let me see if I have the other. Here we go. Yes, I do. All right. Have a great day. And a great Monday. And I'll talk to you guys later.
And today was a day just like any other.